The message never changes, right? I think we've heard that before. The message of the gospel never changes. Jesus is the only answer for the hope of humanity, the hope of mankind. With us, we're looking at it as model is going to drive everything, style and all things. And let's say your model is for people to be who they are in relationship with one another, then that will drive style. But if you come to it from a different angle and say, all right, style is our model, we're going to reach people with the way we do things versus the model of saying we're going to do things based on how we view our neighbors. It's a completely different process or path, if you will. I think style is important as long as it's not dictating ministry. I think ministry and the model of your ministry has to dictate your style. Case in point, I think it's important that when we worship, that we give ample amount of time. Let's say it's a small church or a rural church or just a church. Let's say a church is already gathering,
right?
And it's not a new work, or it's a replant, or there's at least a group of people there that are gathering for worship. Your model, if you're going to go with the model of loving others, loving your neighbors, and connecting with community, then it should even dictate your style of your worship gathering. And we must give in our model, and we believe that people are the most important thing that we do in connecting with those people. We believe that ought to have a prime seat in our style and in our worship service. We don't care whether we sing hymns or whether we sing contemporary music, or if the preacher wears a tie. The preacher needs to be who he is. The music, the people that God has put in that body that are musically inclined, they just need to be who they are. And if we love each other and we're serving one another, then none of that, we won't get bent out of shape if it's not our cup of tea, if you will. And so we give ample time in our worship service for people to connect with one another. Like I was told a long time ago, the most important thing in worship is not always the preaching. And that's hard for a preacher to hear.
Yeah, it is. Because you really think everybody goes home with that outline memorized, don't you?
Absolutely. Right. We've changed people forever. And this fellow told me, an older guy, and he was an evangelist, and he said, that's not the most important thing you do on Sunday morning. The most important thing you do when you gather for worship is connect with one another. And then everything will flow out of that. And it really changed the way I thought, and really has changed. It has affected, the process, whether we're replanting, whether we're taking and, pastoring an existing church or starting a new one. It's about the people.
Let's get back to this methodology piece that you started down. The world is changing so fast. I mean, technology is changing so fast. People are moving so much now. So how does your methodology really impact that? You hit that a little bit talking about, the mode and the style that it needs to connect with community and relationship. But talk to us a little bit about that methodology. Just unpack that a little bit more.
So that has to be fluid. Methodology, is something that's got to change with culture. It's got to change with technology. All the things that you enumerated there, but it's still at its core has got to be connection, and it has to be a way in which we get to know our neighbors and so on and so forth. Now, whatever that looks like. Currently, I'm in a very rural setting with an older population demographic, and they're not on a lot of the platforms on social media or even the neighborhood stuff that's being used throughout the world to connect neighbors. They're not on those things. So we have to go sit and drink coffee, and we have to go and be at the ball games, and whether any sport is being played, we have to. But all that comes back to is knowing your community, is knowing your neighbors, and once you know them, and then, you use the brain the Lord has given you, and we kind of walk through and find them where they are and begin to connect. In a rural setting, it is very much more appropriate. It was for us downtown Atlanta to do social media type connections, and next door and all those different things where you get to know. And so, but we knew that community.
Just to be sure, a lot of people may not know that are watching, but Nextdoor it's a social app that is used in neighborhoods. And just to clarify, where you were with the church plant in Atlanta, it's a very neighborhood oriented place. I mean, you can walk to everything kind of in the inner core, just about where you were. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, that's right. And,
okay.
And those neighborhoods had names, and you had, think 5 boroughs in New York, if you're familiar with with North America or the United States. You had a pride in the neighborhood you're coming from. And so all that media platform, or that social media platform, was based on streets. Right, so it was real condensed, real close. But it was, although I was within 5, 10, 15 feet of my neighbor's house, it was not as likely to walk over there and just knock on the door. It was not as appropriate, if you will, because of the way the neighbors view that type of interaction. Whereas out in the rural settings, you may have to walk, drive, whatever you got to do, miles to get to your neighbor, but they don't mind you knocking on their door. That's here. You're right. So right. You got to figure out.
Yeah. They kind of open the door, open their arms, come on in, have a cup of coffee. Yeah.
Right. And that's just how it works here. And so you got to know how it works. And so methodology changes with who your neighbor is.
Right.
And if you love people, and if your model is to love people and connect with your neighbors, regardless of, what it takes to get there, then you're willing to adjust your methods. But if your model is to be that particular style or whatever, that people are going to look like this, act like this, smell like this, and that's what you're going to reap, then you won't adjust your methods. You'll just use whatever method has always worked to get that particular person.
Okay, let me be a devil's advocate for a second and push back.
Sure.
What it sounds like to me you're advocating is that the most important thing when you're in a church like that, trying to reach your community, the most important thing is the culture, the context in which you are, and that should drive everything you do. Is that accurate? Or are you, because you said about scripture a while ago, basing it on scripture. So it sounds like you're saying not really scripture, but it's really the community that really drives it all.
Yeah. Well, let me say it like this. The scripture, the community drives how I'm going to reach the community with the scripture.
Okay.
This is about discovering simple ways to start and continue gospel conversations with your neighbors. And whatever methodology that you got to do, that you need to do, as long as it's not unbiblical. It's not, if you're in a culture of drunkards, we wouldn't advocate anything. I wouldn't advocate anything that would be unbiblical in order to reach a neighbor. But if your neighbor has people over at their house every Thursday night to sit on the front porch, and the majority of those people are going to drink a cold beer, and you're a teetotaler, doesn't mean you don't go.
Okay.
But it also means you go and you keep your integrity and your convictions, but you still connect with your neighbors. Now that's a simple, I think that may be a simplification. But yes, I would say you got to read your community. They're not just attracted to us because we say we're the church. And honestly, I thought that was a phenomenon for urban, at least urban America. Right. But man, I'm in the middle of the hills and farms, and it's this. There's as much distrust in the Bible Belt. If the Bible Belt is that, if you're not familiar, that's kind of that swath through the south of the United States where everybody everybody knows everybody and everybody's a believer, and at least that's what everybody thinks. But I'm still in that Bible Belt, and man, it's tough going. There's as much distrust in my rural community as there was in urban Atlanta and amongst people that were unchurched or not religiously affiliated. There's as much distrust.
Yeah, no, I was going to say that's great. The way I've described it is oftentimes we're trying to work in a place where there's scorched land. That people they're burned out. They've heard it before. And, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They've been hammered and hammered and hammered. And it's like, nah, you do your thing. I'm not interested.
Yeah, we're selling a product they don't want.
Yeah.
In fact, we're actually trying to sell them a product, and I know that's that may be a crass way of saying it.
No, I get it.
We're trying to sell them a product. Not only do they not want it, but they think will hurt them. And so and that's as much reality here where I am now in this rural setting as it was where I was then. So the method has got to follow. It's got to our methods. The message never changes, right? I think we've heard that before. The message of the gospel never changes. Jesus is the only answer for the hope of humanity, the hope of mankind. But in order to get a listening, to get a hearing of that message, the methods have got to be tailored to the community in which God's put you in to reach.